Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is flying to Washington, D.C. this week for another high-stakes meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump amid a renewed U.S.-Iran diplomatic push. The discussions will come as indirect U.S.-Iran nuclear negotiations held in Oman have so far failed to bridge key differences, with Tehran insisting talks stay focused on its nuclear program, while Washington and Israel want broader talks to include ballistic missiles and Iran's support for regional armed groups. Netanyahu believes any deal must compel Tehran to curb its missile program and hold backing for Hezbollah and Hamas and other proxies, a position Tehran has firmly rejected as non-negotiable. The region watches nervously as diplomatic engagements and military posturing continue alongside warnings from Gulf states about the risk of wider conflict. Our guest today is Maurice Hirsch from the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, joining us live from Jerusalem. Mr. Hirsch, welcome to the program.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Good afternoon. So, Mr. Hirsch, what's the core objective of Benjamin Netanyahu's meeting with Donald Trump this week? How is it different from past meetings?
So I think that there are two possibly major goals for Prime Minister Netanyahu in Washington this week. Firstly is to coordinate whatever is going forward on the Iranian front to see exactly how the talks should be framed, can they be framed, should the scope be given to Iran to again lead the world down this path of unfulfilled promises? Should they be given a clear directive, a clear ultimatum? This is what needs to be done, and this is the deadline that we expect to see dismantling the program entirely, dismantling entirely the production of the ballistic weapons and disarmament, and similarly defunding all of the terror proxies. These are the three elements that are critical moving forward for security, not only Israel's security. The ballistic missiles threaten and have been used not only against Israel, and therefore they are on whether the Iranians like that or not. Second goal of is to discuss what's happening with the peace moving forward in Gaza. We're seeing repeated statements by the leaders of Hamas that they're refusing to what they agreed to previously. They're refusing to disarm. They are refusing to relinquish any governance position in the Gaza Strip. And these two subjects are key subjects for the entire security of the Middle East, which do require this face-to-face interaction, I think, between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump.
Mr. Hirsch, Iran's delegation has said that ballistic missiles are non-negotiable. From Tehran's perspective, why is this a red line? Well,
for Tehran, really giving up on its nuclear program is possibly a somewhat moot question after the attack last June. It's something that they haven't really managed to re-establish and to rehabilitate in the meantime. So they're happy to possibly talk about restrictions being placed on that development in the knowledge that nothing really substantial is going on there in the next, or at least in the foreseeable future. On the subject of the ballistic missiles, it's their red line because since June last year, they have gone into an upward grade production of the ballistic missiles of all of the different ranges, and that's something which they've invested time, energy, and critical financial resources, while Iran is basically drying up, suffering its worst drought in recorded history. The Iranian regime is spending more and more money on developing and producing ballistic missiles. They cannot now say that we're just going to end all of that production and then tell the Iranian people, we murdered you in the streets for no reason whatsoever. We're not going to provide you with a solution for the water conflict. We're not going to provide you for a solution for the financial problems. And yet we're also now going to suddenly stop our ballistic missile production. I think the Iranians know that they've made the wrong decision until now. And unfortunately, they are incapable of understanding that this is possibly their last option that remains on the table before decisive action is taken against them.
So President Donald Trump called the Oman talks very good, yet no breakthrough emerged. How should we interpret that optimism amid deep disagreements?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
So I'm asking again, the President Donald Trump said that the Oman talks are very good and are very positive, but no breakthrough has emerged. How can we say that it's very good or not?
So I think President Trump is trying to reach an agreement that will avoid military interaction, that it will avoid this almost inevitable now conflict. And I think he's trying to frame it in terms of positivity moving forward. I think it's part of the game plan of President Trump to show that he is open, that he is willing, that he actually wants to get to a political solution rather than going down the military path. And he's willing to see even small movement by the Iranians as something which is positive. Now, I don't think we should be misled by the public announcements of the Iranian regime behind closed doors. They know that they are in trouble. The Iranian leadership has, as we know, taken steps to send money out of the country. They are avoiding public appearances. They have implemented much more stringent security restrictions than ever before. This is something we don't do when you feel that you're coming from a position of strength. And that weakness, that understanding of the Iranian position is, I think, something which President Trump is trying to leverage, projecting positivity rather than saying, well, you seem to be running only to the military solution, which he is not.
Mr. Hirsch, how are Gulf Arab states like Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Oman influencing or responding to the US-Iran dialogue? And what role can regional diplomacy play in preventing escalation?
So I think there are different approaches of the different countries. I think many of the Gulf countries would like to see Iran isolated as it is, subject to international sanctions, rather than being opened up, getting rid of the axis of evil and the terror regime, and then have the access and free access now, all of the Iranian oil. I think that's something which is a critical factor as part of any of these discussions. I think that the Gulf countries that see positivity, that see progress for the region away from this Iranian axis of evil, are willing to even possibly participate and in the effort to ensure that the Iranian regime is changed, whilst others would prefer to see Iran as it is, but weakened, staying in that very compromised situation, not necessarily for the best of the Iranian people, but for the best of their own economy's interests.
So in your view, how does the domestic political climate in Tehran, including recent protests and leadership dynamics, affect Iran's negotiating position?
Well, I think that obviously when you're having to deal with mass demonstrations at home, when you know that you don't have the support of the people going forward for the policies that you are presenting outwardly in the face of a potential war, when you have to divide your force between defending against a military attack, but at the same time controlling and killing, as it were, the Iranians on the streets, then that's something which obviously divides their attention and really divides their force. That's not something which the Iranian regime can ignore. It's something which they must take into account, that whilst they are trying to project this violence outwardly, at home they are to insurrection. They are subject to the will of the people to change the regime, to get rid of this regime, and to find a better solution. Economically, Iran, we know, is collapsing. And that is because of the regime, that is because of the sanctions, and that's something which could change almost immediately for the better of the future of the Iranian people. So that is something which obviously does play into these negotiations.
Mr. Hirsch, let's assume that Netanyahu and Trump agree on a unified strategy. What might be the next phase of diplomacy look like, and how might Iran respond?
So I think the next stage of diplomacy would be to say to Iran, we have heard your arguments, we have seen and exposed your negotiating tactics. We are setting a deadline for the end of these talks. Either you come to an agreement on all of the different subjects that President Trump has put onto the table. And if not, then we will have to consider other options. Those other options would obviously be a military option. I think it would possibly include, whilst most people focus only on the US and potentially Israel as part of that effort, I think there would be other regional partners participating in that type of a coordinated action, some less openly, less publicly than others. I think that will be gauged based on the perceived success of the operation. And as the operation, I think, develops and is perceived to be a greater success and is getting closer towards removing the regime of the Ayatollahs, I think we'll see more regional partners openly participating in this effort, in the understanding that there will be no detrimental consequences from that. And so that, I think, will be the next steps going forward.
Maurice Hirsch, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your insights on these delicate and hugely consequential developments. We truly appreciate your expertise.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot.